Let's talk about our personal, social, and cultural identities. As we've discussed previously, our identity is an important part of our self-concept, and there are three different lenses through which we can come to understand our identities. First, we can look at personal identities. Our personal identities include the components of self that are primarily intrapersonal and connected to our life experiences. We may change these identities as often as we have new experiences or develop new interests or hobbies. Some examples of personal identities include if you were to think of yourself as an antique collector, or a dog lover, a cyclist, a singer, shy, athletic, a number of different personal identities that come from within ourselves. The next type of identity we can have is social identity. Our social identities are the components of self that are derived from involvement in social groups in which we are interpersonally committed. So in other words, these have to do with our relationships to others. And our social identities can be voluntary or involuntary, and they can be explicit or implied. So for example, we might be a member of a historical society. We might be a fraternity member, or a high school music teacher, or a book club member. But these are generally identities that are tied with some kind of external group that has a membership of some sort. And these groups make statements about who we are and who we are not. And then finally, we have cultural identities. Cultural identities are based on socially constructed categories that teach us a way of being and include expectations for social behavior or ways of acting. These cultural identities are the least changeable of the three types of identity that we have. These can include things like Irish American, female, multiracial, heterosexual. The list goes on and on. These are different cultural identities that we can have. And in addition, these identities, whether they are personal, social, or cultural, can be either ascribed or avowed. If an identity is ascribed to us, these are identities that are personal, social, or cultural that are placed on us by others. So if it is an ascribed identity, it is an identity that is put on us by someone else. Whereas if we are talking about avowed identities, these are identities that we claim for ourselves. And in some cases, our ascribed and avowed identities can match up with one another. Other people might think of us as a dog lover, and we might think of ourselves as a dog lover. But maybe other people think that we are a dog lover when really we just like cats better, we're just allergic to them, right? So these identities can be either ascribed to us by other people or avowed by us and claimed for ourselves. In addition, these identities can be either dominant or non-dominant. Dominant identities historically have had more resources and influence, whereas non-dominant identities historically have had and currently have less resources and influence. Generally speaking, in our society, there is an uneven distribution of resources and power, and this leads some groups to have inherent privileges where other groups have inherent disadvantages. And generally speaking, non-dominant identities tend to be subject to institutionalized discrimination in society in the form of racism, sexism, heterosexism, ableism, the list goes on and on. But ultimately, any of these identities, whether they are personal, social, or cultural, whether they are ascribed, avowed, or dominant or non-dominant, all of these identities have an impact on who we are and ultimately how we communicate with the world at large.